Hey, I'm Daniel Berger, and this is Adventures of a Real Estate Broker. Welcome to the podcast where Metro New York real estate meets great stories and a douse of humor. Forget the dry sales talk. Here we dive into the fun and unexpected moments of real estate. Join me each week as we explore Westchester, Long Island, the Bronx, and more. You'll hear about the people, the places, and the crazy situations that make this industry so interesting. Thanks to our sponsor, Remax Prestige Properties, we're ready to share the lighter side of real estate. Whether you're a pro, a buyer, or just curious, we've got something for everyone. Ready for today's adventure? Let's get into it. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Adventures of a Real Estate Broker with Daniel Berger. Today, I have the pleasure of having Kurt Byers. He's the head of business development for New Western. It's the nation's largest real estate investment marketplace, and we'll talk about what that means for pitching buyers and sellers together. And he operates in 35 markets nationwide, including in my market in Metro New York. So this will be a learning experience for me as well. With that, Kurt, I want to thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah, happy to be here. Appreciate the introduction.
Give us a little background of either about first about yourself, and then a little bit about what you're doing and what you're seeing currently in the marketplace. It sounds very interesting.
Yeah, so a little bit of background. I didn't come from a kind of traditional real estate background, but have been here a couple of years and have really just fallen in love with all the real estate, investment real estate in general. I head our business development team, which does really all of our partnerships, our programs with agents, wholesalers, sellers. We do all the events. We do the lobbying and the PR and that type of stuff for government relations or things like that. And so we're very connected within the industry. And so we have been doing a lot of fun stuff this year, especially with the way the real estate market is. We've been able to grow year over year in the partnership kind of team, like 290%. So we're finding the right avenues and the marketplace really overall. So we're a real estate investment marketplace. We buy and sell a house about every 13 minutes nationally. We have 250,000 investors on the back end. We'll buy the property, put it in our marketplace, and they buy it from us. And essentially, they're looking for homes that need some work, need some love, that wouldn't be a great fit on the market because it needs $100,000 or a conventional buyer wouldn't qualify. So that's where we found our success is in that kind of distress space for homes.
And with the homes that you're buying, are they current or are they all off market, or some are on market, some are off market?
A little bit of both. We do the majority off market. About maybe 15% of our properties are bought from the MLS, but a lot of it is from off market sources, whether that's an agent referral or it's wholesaler or it's direct to seller from our marketing or partners. It's typically off market.
Okay, cool. And then I guess then when you buy it, is there anything that you ever do to the homes, or for the most part, it's basically you buy it to then be able to source to your private lenders to package them in a way that they want to purchase it?
Yeah, so really the only thing we do is we buy it and ensure there's a clear title, make sure the process is the same for every transaction and every buyer. But it's really up to them on their exit strategy or what they want to do, whether they're going to rehab it and return it to the market, or they're going to buy and hold, or they're going to do a short term or a midterm rental. It's really up to them. We help them understand what might fit for the property or the house, but it's really up to them and their expertise what they do with it.
And so what's your best practices for how do you find finding the homes and at the value that makes sense, right? Because you don't want to buy it and then you can't do anything with it. So what's your best practices on how you source homes and how you make sure that you're properly paying the people that want to sell them, but yet have some leeway that that you can make some money and your investors can make some money?
Yeah, I'd say one of the best practices we have is just our network of agents working with other agents. So we have about 700 licensed agents throughout our markets. And so there's a lot of iBuyers that are very digital. It's a transaction from an algorithm, whereas our agents will actually go to the house, comp on the MLS because we're all licensed, and then make a fair offer. We're not going to back them down. And part of that is we cover the seller's closing costs. We make it very easy. We can close in 5 days. So there's a bit of a convenience factor to it, but because we have the MLS access and the most up-to-date comps, we can show people that need $75,000 in work. And because we're going to work with an investor, like this is where we need to buy it. And so we really break down their net compared to just giving a blind offer. And some of the best practices is working with agents to understand that they can monetize a lot of the leads that they might pass on because it's not a good fit for the market. But if that house needs a ton of work or they're going to become a project manager, we can become a really easy solution to just say, actually, I work with New Western. They can buy it for cash, close as soon as you want. You don't have to clean it. You don't have to repair it. Just get out of whether it's financial distress or physical. The other aspect is going direct to seller is just being very patient, being very helpful, understanding that likely the distress is from something that wasn't ideal happening in that seller's life. So if we can help them out of their situation and make it the best for everyone, that's typically best practices. If you go in pushy and hard, it's hard to get those deals done. Sometimes it's a probate and takes 9 months.
So do you buy houses that are in probate and also ones that have current tenants won't leave?
Yeah, we prefer it vacant just because it's easier, but we
Of
definitely
course.
we do lease backs and stuff, but there's always some sticky situations when there's a distress
Well,
factor. Yeah.
we have to talk after the podcast because I have a couple that I do have some interest in. So maybe we'll work something out. So that's interesting and see what you have in New York. So that's good. So the people that are buying, are they normally individuals? Are they LLCs? Are they corporation partnerships? Corporate? What's the makeup of your clients on the buy side?
It's really the kind of local mom and pop type individual because a lot of how fast we move and our process just doesn't really fit the institutional model. And a lot of the homes wouldn't pass the institutional inspection just from they want more of the rent ready homes. A house on our marketplace on average sells within 90 minutes. And so it really is the local investor who already knows the area and can close quickly, understand the prices, walk the house with us. So it's largely comprised of all individuals from different markets. And we just did a big survey with our investors, and a big chunk of that is like they do 1 to 5 a year. And people doing a lot, there's the 5 to 10 and 10 plus if you have different crews, but a lot of them are like your husband and wife corporate refugee type. They do one on the side to make some extra money, and then they end up leaving to go full time into flipping or rehabbing houses because they like doing it together. Largely individual, surprisingly.
And do you guys all also have an arm of financing so that if people come to you that they're able to either buy it in cash? I guess some do, obviously, but then others say, "Oh, I'd like to work on a note with you." So how does that work?
Yeah, so we have essentially an additional marketplace called Sherman Bridge, which is our own hard money lender plus other hard money and private money lenders. Based on your situation, experience, we help you match with the best kind of offer and term for that property and that investor's experience. I mean, a lot of times the people with cash will end up doing private money because they can do 5 projects at once instead of paying cash for the whole thing. And so they just split up their money and work the different projects throughout the year instead of all into one. So we see it both ways, but we do a lot of cash transactions and then a lot of private or hard money.
And so the agents that help refer, what percent of the buys that you have come from licensed real estate agents?
Probably around 30, 30% probably. In the last 2 years, we've gotten over 1 billion from realtors directly. We do a lot of volume with them for sure.
That's great. Talk to me about technology, AI. How is technology and AI changing the way that you do business positively and negatively?
I think positively it's just making everyone a little more efficient. But I think one thing that the real estate world hasn't quite caught up on is how relationship driven a lot of these transactions are. And so while there's aspects AI can come in and make it operationally more efficient, I think taking away the pieces that make the human side of the transaction go away will not be the best thing for the industry, but also if it can make closings faster, transactions easier, the leads like followed up on better. That's all stuff I think is really important. But for us, like we like to comp the houses ourselves. We like to do that because there's just not a ton of error there. I think there's a lot of times if you look at an automated AVM and it's way off, that can really impact whether your offer is going to be accepted or not, or the seller is going to get what they need. We do a lot of things still manual, but we're starting to understand where AI can and cannot help our agents do more deals.
When you purchase a property, do you and then you sell it and you said, I think we said 90 minutes or 90, it was 90 minutes, right?
Mhm.
What's your formula? It's like, is it we bought it at X, it's 15, it's a percent more, or do you reprice it and try to get it that way? How do you go from once you buy an asset to how do you price that asset?
Yeah, so we essentially just work on what is in the middle. So we'll buy it and then do a small markup to the investor instead of taking a percent commission. Because we don't list the homes like on the MLS, it's all within our marketplace. So we just mark it up in the middle there, and then that seller
So
gets
an
paid.
example, if you bought something for 299, you might list it for 319 or something like that.
Yeah, so we basically just we buy it, close on it with cash, and then resell it after we make sure title's clear and everything else, and match it with the investor, and then they close on it for that kind of margin in the middle there.
And so also when you run title and all that other, do you buy things before you have the title or you wait until you're waiting until you have that, of course, right?
Yeah, because we take it to title and all that. It's just a matter of we like to make sure that every time our investor is buying from us, they know it's a clear title. They know
Sure.
the liens and all that are good to go. So we try to make sure all that is done before we close on it and then close it to them.
So that's also something interesting is that do most of your buyers accept your title that you've already just done on something, or do they have to rerun it themselves?
We own a company called Spartan Title as well. And they're basically just experts in these types of transactions. We just have all of our properties closed there. And
But to the next buyers of the properties, just does that transfer to them, or do they have so the buyers accept the title and it's so does it stay under the same title policy that you've just written and it just transfers, or does it get rewritten?
we close on it at first, transfer title to us, and then we transfer title to them at closing. So it's under them, like fully underwritten for that new buyer instead of under us. So we transfer the title
So
fully.
it's really a transfer. So you're
Yeah.
actually saving some costs because you're pulling out that they have to spend the cost of title work.
Yeah, I think we pay for it on the front. I think there is some title cost still because you still have to do an
There's still
additional.
recording, there's
Yeah.
still some recording, but it's not, but if you don't have to do the leg, the heavy lift is what costs more money, not necessarily the retitling. The retitling is not that expensive. It's the background work to ensure it was a clean title.
Yeah, and which does make it easier when it's at Spartan Title to begin. But a lot of times the front side is can be wherever someone else chose, and so they just transfer it to us, and then we close on it to the investor because we'll still close on it on the front side at a different title company if that's what the seller needs, and then we have Spartan Title do it on the back end. But when it's
But
at
that's
Spartan for both, it's much
right.
easier. Yeah.
Oh, no, what's interesting though is that in New York, the seller has nothing to do with the title. Buyer has it, right? And where I'm at, the seller wouldn't tell you anyone what to do. The seller just tries to sell their house, and then when you go to be a buyer, you run your title work to and get title insurance. So that's a little that might be a little different. But in New York, it's the seller wouldn't tell you, would never tell you who to use.
Yeah, it's a little different everywhere. Like LA has some pretty interesting rules compared to Texas, compared to Chicago. So it is interesting that, and it's very much a compliant industry. So we do a lot of work to stay on top of it in each of the states.
Right. And so because you're in 25 markets, 35 marketplaces, you obviously have you're divesting yourself of one specific market and what could be the pitfalls in just having one market. Clearly, different markets now are at different stages in this cycle. With dealing with 35 markets, what are you seeing that the current that the landscape looks like in the real estate world?
I think it's definitely an ever-changing market. I think it's been pretty tough just across the board. I think the markets where the kind of the rental market became hot, we saw more landlord type investors start buying from us. But overall, with the rates, I think there's going to start being some cuts this year and next year. So I think more buyers are going to be able to enter the market, which is good for our investors who want to do fix and flip and then refinance if they're doing more of the rentals. So I think activity is going to pick up. There's been a lot of like news articles about how investors are buying up all the properties, but like institutional, that was less than 3% of the properties. And what most people don't know is most of the investor purchases actually end up coming back to the market, like at an affordable rate. So they're adding to that supply. But I think the overall market, if we can continue to push supply instead of just demand, I think it'll steady out a little bit. But if we have crazy pent up demand and they drop rates a bunch and the supply doesn't follow, I think the housing prices go up. But I think if we can continue with enough new builds, enough rehabs that each kind of local market can stabilize, I think it'll be in a very good spot. It just might take a couple of years.
I think I've heard things like Florida is not really doing so well. And partly it was because during the whole COVID scenario, a lot of people didn't have to go to work. And so they're like, if I don't have to go to my office and I can still get paid, I'm going to go to Florida. So they bought like condos and stuff down there. Then
Yeah.
you also had a lot of people, investors are like, oh, I'm going to do the Airbnb thing. So they go do the Airbnb. And I know that the market's soft. Obviously, you can't, you know, say that a whole state is based off of because obviously they're pockets. But I've heard investors like who are now selling things that they bought because they can't their nightly rates or the occupancy rates where it was 95% for a couple of years is now like 75%. So it's certainly, and because there's a lot of people were doing that.
Yeah.
I do think there is a little bit of a that going on. And then clearly certain states, all the condos from the condo that collapsed in Florida, that's really changing now that they have to ensure that they have more reserves, right, to make sure that they're doing the improvements. Well, has caused people that always thought condos were the greatest thing probably are taking a little bit of pause now because they're afraid of these whopping assessments because for 30 years, these buildings weren't really properly accruing funds to make sure that they could do stuff. But that's more specific. So I would say in New York, what had been a huge seller's market is probably softening. I'm like 30 something miles from the city, New York City, I would say. So it's still decent, but it's a little softer, but that's also a weird thing to say because as this crazy market in the last 5 to 8 years has gone, sellers keep raising the amounts that they're charging for properties. And if right now things are definitely sitting on the market longer now than they were 6 months ago or a year ago. But part of it is also because people are obnoxiously listing houses and condos for more money, and me included. So I'm not saying, but you do that when you're representing a seller because you're getting it. And then the other issue is, so what you are talking about with the supply is important because I guess if you have an investment and you need to sell it, that's one thing. But if it's the house that you live in and you're selling, where are you going to go?
Exactly. Yeah. The lock-in effect is a huge issue right now.
So there's a lot of people that where are you going to go? So like in
Yep.
my area, I'm on the border of Connecticut. The property taxes in New York are extremely high. They're less high in Connecticut. So I'm selling some bigger houses where people are like fed up with the taxes. They'll sell that. They're not downsizing. They're only downsizing their taxes.
Yeah.
Some are upsizing for downsizing their taxes.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit of a shift that I see. And what I found is a lot of real estate people feel and buyers and so feel that they want interest rates to drop. And my view was that when interest rates were 2.5%, that was great for sellers. It was not good for buyers because a seller could get any price that they wanted plus 100,000 or 200,000, right? So that's not good for a buyer, right? So just with low interest rates doesn't mean that you can buy your house. It just means that your interest is lower but you're fighting with so many more people. Like it was back in the day, you would have 15 to 20 offers. Now for a hot house, you're probably getting six, right? So
Yeah.
I'd rather go against six people or five other people than 20 other people. And then the other thing is that interest rates go up and down, they're cyclical. But if you buy a house for 200,000 over what you should have because your interest rates were low, because you put your bid in based off of what your monthly spend can be, you,
Yeah.
you when the rates go high and you're locked into a fix, that's great. You're at 2%, but you spent 200,000 more on the house that you needed to, as opposed to when interest rates are 7% or 8% and you're fighting with less people, you're going to get the house for less less costly. And when interest rates come down, you can refinance. So sometimes high interest rates from a buying perspective might be better. Certainly a seller has the problem if they have to go now find a house, right? When you're like, my current interest rate's 3%, but I'm not going to go into a 7%. Maybe you would if you could sell your house for a lot of money
Yeah.
and you're downsizing. So it's interesting with that. That's I think that analysis is one where AI and bots and things like that, while might work in some industries, I don't really know, not yet, that the people in the real estate world have to worry so much that it's going to be so automated that people aren't going to be used in the process. What's your thought on that?
I just don't, I don't think there's enough, and maybe yet. That's such a big transaction for people. It's not you're using an AI checkout bot for your groceries or to buy a new hat online. That is a could be $1 million plus transaction that, like, if you don't have the expertise and you're banking on the fact that AI will not have any errors for that much money, to me is just that piece is hard for me to think that it's going to be fully given up. I think the people that use AI to better serve their clients and to get them properties faster or more aligned or understanding what they can maybe do to be a better agent or have better presence, I think that'll be great. But I just don't see enough people fully giving into AI being the end all be all for a transaction that big. Even we talk about it all the time. If it was just AI and it was just marketplace, can you submit a property and hope the AI values it the way you want? And if the AI is wrong, can you send it three comps to say, actually, check this? I just don't know if it's ever going to be the way exactly we want it to be. I think it can be helpful, just like a lawyer may now draft a statement using AI, but then they have to go and before presenting it to court, they're not just going to trust that it's completely right. So I think there's just some drawbacks, but I definitely think it's going to push the industry towards more AI.
Using AI to help you write to wordsmith your listing is a lot different. And you're still not going to just put it out there and then just that's the words. You're gonna take it and edit it based off of what makes sense. But so something like that isn't bad to have, but to have them show the houses and analyze what's going on, I'm still not worried about that. AI to make you more efficient is obviously, or any technology, right? AI is just a form of technology. Technology is not bad. We've come a long way and we're always gonna continue to go further with technology, but you can't really replace the personal touch in the transaction. Like you said, it's some of the largest purchase that many people are going to be doing is their home, and you probably want somebody who has a skill set. I guess at some point you're going to be able to go to a doctor where the robot will check you in, they'll take all your stuff, and you just lay on a table, and they'll can do surgery on you from the robot can do surgery.
Yeah.
I'm sure that can happen at some point. At some point, I don't know if that's now,
Yeah.
but certainly I think using it, I think can certainly be helpful. But I don't know if everyone wants like a if a new property comes on the market and I have a bot sending text to my clients, right, to interact as a computer, I don't know if they want that. But that's maybe me being foolish too, because as it's getting more to be known, maybe it does it faster than me, better than me, maybe the same, right? Maybe it actually can pull the same things that I would be pulling and then communicating to more people. So it's possible. It's also my view is that I don't have to have 700 transactions a year. I can do well with 30 to 50 or whatever I do. So it's not, sometimes I don't want to to automate things, right? I purposely don't want to automate things. I want to be the one that sends out a text that it's from me, it's me talking, because isn't that kind of like our secret sauce, right? Kurt and I have we have our experiences and how we work with people, and that's how we're moving the business forward.
To me, I almost think of it like the amount of times that you're going to start seeing AI being every interaction you have, and then you like get a phone call from someone that's real. That's going to be a much like more important phone call because you're actually going to get the human connection or you're going to see the text. But how many people now don't even pick up the phone? And if you pick up the phone, you're like a differentiated person in that market because, oh, you actually are reaching out to me personally. That's already becoming wild to some people. That's not happening for everyone. And I feel like real estate is going to need that because I think the other aspect is you're going to have to be able to adapt to your client's needs. And if that client is, I want this all automated, I don't want to do anything myself, I don't want to, whatever, I want you to send it as soon as it's ready. Like, I think there's the ability to adapt to that, to have the systems in place to take care of those clients. But then there's also maybe, hey, maybe I'm not like the best fit. Maybe you need to go do a flat fee listing or whatever. And then they realize that wasn't the right fit. And then they come back to the human because they need some of that human interaction. I think everyone's going to have their different level of comfort with it. But with an interaction and a transaction of this size, I just don't think you're ever going to be able to automate out of the human out of it.
I mean, but still people have the right to choose, right? So for listings, people like to use basically the service fee where it's just the listing, right? They pay very low amount of money, you get the pictures, whatever, or they send you the pictures and you just give them the listing service. You can do that, but I know that when I represent buyers, those are harder houses to get into. Less people go there and they're going to get less money. But if that's the way that the seller wants to choose to do it, then that's the way that they should do it. Even from many bankruptcies, right, where the people do bankruptcies and then it's being listed by agents from that are not even close. They don't answer. I've had deals right now where I've had people, they wanted to talk to somebody. They wanted to talk to the listing agent to talk about the offer. And it was confusing where it was on the market, it went into contract, they then lower it. Obviously, the deal didn't happen, but you can't get anyone to talk to. So then you're
Yeah.
flying really blind and you're putting offers in. And I still didn't get it the second time from my client. And it's like they just won't. That's not how they run their business. And what's interesting is I don't know if the sellers or the banks or whomever the asset managers, I don't think they really realize the poor quality of service that they're getting because they would be able to sell things faster and for more money if they had a personal touch, but they choose not to have that ability to communicate.
That's why every single one of our investors, before they're able to join the marketplace, you have to talk with one of our agents and walk through what you're wanting to get out of the marketplace and the experience of working with us. So it's not just flooded with people who don't even want investment properties. They think it's just like an additional source of homes that you would see on the market. It's, these are homes for people that have the capital and the expertise to do these types of projects. And we want the human element so that investors trust us and we can work with them to find them the right home. Whereas like you can just go online and try and find something or an auction and you don't really have any interaction. But the human side in our business, at least, is very at the forefront for us.
I agree. What do you think are some of the hottest markets or business segments currently now, and what do you think that if is going to change in the next 3 to 6 months as well?
The hottest markets as far as cities, or you said segments? I didn't know if you meant.
No, segments in the sense like multifamilies,
Ah,
condos, things like that.
I think the hottest ones currently are going to be like your single family and your more infill type to where you can get a duplex, triplex, or quadplex, whereas that maybe zoning wasn't previously like that wasn't you weren't able to do it, I guess. There's a lot of laws and kind of changes coming out to where they're allowing different zoning. And so I think it'll be a really big opportunity to take a bigger single family lot and turn it into 4 homes or create little mini communities. Whereas like people still want to live, a lot of people still want to live in a single family, but there's so many apartments and other stuff that it has to be the right place with the right kind of economics around it. Whereas I think single family and 1 to 5, say, I think will be very popular just as we get more and more people back on the sidelines to buy. A lot of those people are going to want to buy like the types of homes they want to start their family in. So I think that to me is the biggest. And then I know there's some current push to have like ADUs in more places or have commercial to residential. I just think those are going to have to be done very carefully to make sure you're going to actually attract the right tenant at the right price compared to a single family, which there's a lot of data around.
I have a client who is very savvy. He works in Connecticut and New York, and his thing that he's been doing recently is moving multifamilies into condos. So he'll take them, and then because their tax benefits to the condo is great. So I've done a couple of deals with him where he buys things for $3 million, puts a little bit of work into it, rents them both out, condos them, and then sells like each of them, in that case, 2.5, 2.25, or 2.5 million. So we turned 3 million into 5 million, and not gross, not net, but with huge tax savings with the accelerated depreciation. So that's cool. So I'm learning from that, but I'm learning so much that there's an investment. He's currently buying an old firehouse in mid-state
Oh
New York.
yeah.
And no fire pole though. That would be the icing on the cake. But it's a firehouse. The city sold it. It's under contract right now. And the plan is to make a restaurant. It's like downtown, right? So it's like
Nice.
that town's trying to revitalize the area. He's gonna so I liked it so much. I'm actually probably moving in as an investor with him,
Oh, there you go.
for a piece of it, because I see what he's doing, and I'm like, I want to be more like you when I grow up. He's younger than me, but like he's very astute. And I know that when we do purchases, he knows what his P&L says, and he won't bid higher than that. Which again, that is kudos to him, because a lot of people you can't let your emotions and your passion get in the way of stuff. These are Many times they're businesses, especially if you're an investor. They need to be a business decision
Yeah.
that what works, dot I's, cross T's, and the math needs to math. And so he's doing that, and he's going to build 4 apartment buildings, would be rentals, I believe, on top of the firehouse,
Yeah, that would be awesome.
on the top of the restaurant. But things that are interesting that I learned is, so when you do these accelerated depreciation, you have to have the asset has to be revenue producing before you're allowed to start doing that. If you bought a vacant building and it takes you 3 years to do it or whatever, you're not allowed to do anything until that starts. So this firehouse is a cool one because there's a cell tower on top of the firehouse, and that cell tower is leased to Verizon for X amount of money a year in a long-term lease. So that building is actually revenue producing from day one.
Oh, there.
So those are things that, like, those are the things that bots and AI isn't going to help you with, as opposed to, I've now become a better investor, right? Because of every experience that I have, I take from that, and then I'm able to help guide my people going forward.
Yeah, I think it's that creative element of taking a firehouse and turning it into that it's going to be super hard to take the human away from that. My wife has always said like a firehouse or a church or whatever one day would be such a cool home if it was in the right area because you could be super cool with the design and all that. But I don't know, the learning and the creativity that like a human can provide to become a better investor or to take things that weren't an opportunity and make them revenue generating is just going to be such a hard thing to pass up that I don't think AI can do.
And I think other things that we do that are important is when not to invest, right?
Yeah.
Because obviously somebody might come to us and say, "Oh, I have money, I have 300,000, I just inherited or whatever, and it's my nest egg, and I want to get into real estate." And then, but that's not so easy, right? Are you putting it in? Do you have assets? Are you putting this into an LLC so the tenants, if they're tenants, can't sue you when they slip and fall and go after your retirement money? Are you going to do this? Are you going to do that? Okay, now you're going to have tenants. You know what? Tenants don't always pay. And then you have to get rid of them. And so it's not, so I think a lot of what we do is really trying to have people go in eyes wide open and ensure that they understand what the pitfalls can be. Because as it's not easy, right? It's not like
Yeah.
it's not easy, but it can be rewarding, it can be fun, and it's a great way, like to for someone that has all their money in the stock market, it's really a good way to divest is to get into other forms of assets. And real estate is
Yeah.
one. It's certainly harder, right? Because obviously a stock that you like, you buy the stock, and when you're ready to sell it, you sell the stock. And you can do that. You can't really do that with real estate, but there's a lot of benefits to real estate. And that's why you need professionals. You're building a marketplace for people to come and sell their house, and you're also building a marketplace for individuals and or partnerships or whatever to come and say, oh, how do we invest with you, or help me find properties that make sense for us. And
Yeah.
uh, you're really, it's like you really, if you took it back to what my view of what the stock market was, right? That you're basically own a seat on the exchange, you're basically the specialist, right? So you're the specialist, you're buying properties, right? There are people that want to sell, you're buying it, and then you're trying to sell it, right? So the specialist, it's not always you that there's a transaction. They have to hold stuff. That's the whole point of it, right? Is that there's
Yeah.
you're creating liquidity, right? In the sense of and creating a market space. So that's your company's superpower, and your value is that you're making it easy for people to sell, and you're making it easy for people to buy. And obviously you guys are allowed to get a cut of that, because that's without your value add, it wouldn't be possible.
Yeah. We definitely like to think so. We make it easy on both sides, that's for sure.
So I guess you can take any clips from this podcast and use it as advertise. You probably have to pay me for a paid advertiser, but that's if that's what you're doing, what it seems like, then that's a great thing. And obviously, you guys are the largest private company to do that, to set up the private exchange. So I think that's of the things that I've heard. That makes a lot of sense. And again, people don't have to, it seems like you have assets of all different price points, and all
Yeah.
different areas. So you're giving people a lot of flexibility and a lot of options. So I think that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you want to add in regard to what you're doing, what your company's doing, what you're seeing, or going forward?
Maybe just one thing I'd add is to view like these types of properties, the distressed, the more rehab ones, as contributing to the affordable housing aspect. Because a lot of the homes that we put back and we find a vacant or distressed and an investor brings it back to their market or their community is typically below the median price point. And we're bringing that back to an additional commission for realtors. And just Q1 of 2025, there was almost 900 million to realtors in commissions from homes that were vacant and then brought back in rehab. So it's really providing a real change to the industry and really helpful both across realtor work and also affordable and inventory challenges. I always like to just mention how we're contributing, but also allowing investors to make a life of impact, but also revenue. So it's cool to see both sides work together.
I mean, anyone who buys dilapidated properties, invests money, and then puts it back to the market, there's a housing crisis basically throughout the country, and that's people need to be rewarded for taking the gamble of
Yeah.
rehabbing those properties. And of course, like in today's media, anybody can say anything about anything, but certainly having that as your market focus. And so clearly, whether someone likes to be called a flipper or an investor, it doesn't, it's the investor is the nicer way of saying it. But in the end of the day, they're adding value, and they're adding value to the house, to the community. And then nobody's twisting anyone's arms to buy the properties or to rent the properties.
Yeah.
So it's still, if they flipped it in a way that the property's no good, then no one's going to buy it. It's on them to make sure that they're adding value and making sure that's a place that someone wants to be in and live or rent. And that's the value. And so that makes sense.
Yeah.
Kurt, thank you for your words of wisdom and coming on this week. I look forward to having it out where all podcasts are had, and you'll be able to tag yourself and send it around. I appreciate it. Thank you, and continued success for you and your business, and adding value in the world of buying, renovating, and selling. So thank you very much.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Great. So Everyone, this is Daniel Berger with the Adventures of a Real Estate Broker for another week. Thank you very much for tuning in. Until next week, I'll see you on the other side. Thank you very much. Thanks for joining me on the Adventures of a Real Estate Broker. I hope you enjoyed our time together as much as I did. If you laughed, learned something, or just had a good time, do yourself a favor and subscribe to the podcast. A big shout out to our sponsor, RE/MAX Prestige Properties, for making this all possible. Remember to leave a review if you enjoyed the show. It helps more people find us. Until next time, keep it real, keep it fun, and keep exploring the adventures in your neighborhood. I'm Daniel Berger, your New York Realtor, and I'll see you in the next episode.